Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is going to be an incredibly important conversation. Some places are going to be tough. It's going to be a hard conversation. It's going to be a spiritual conversation. But this is a conversation that we're going to have with all the rough edges as we can about race. So I hope you stay here. Remember, we're doing this for awareness. We're doing this to bump up the consciousness of race. And I hope this conversation continues in your home and beyond. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Who is here and willing to have this conversation mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as we do this. And I think we've come up with a plan on how we wanted to proceed with this. I think the first step is we're going to learn about each other and what Stella learned as a child about race and what I learned as a child about race. I probably should start because this is, the action that was taken with young white children, one young white woman, really a young white child, to make sure that my parents tried to navigate how I should react to race in the world. And then, of course, with you, I'm pretty sure you can talk to your own story. I can't speak to your own story, but let's start from the beginning. So did each of us go to a religious body? Were you raised in a church?
Eventually, not the beginning. My dad was Southern Baptist, and I believe he grew up that way and then kind of ventured away, and then he came back.
Okay.
When I was 8 or 9, or pretty young, yeah.
Okay. So I was literally born and raised in a Mormon family.
Okay.
I know, look at her eyes. She goes, what? Yeah, that's exactly the reaction everybody should have when you hear about that. I'm 6 out of 7 children.
Wow.
Right? Okay. So my father had 6 children, and then they got a divorce, and then my mother had one more child with her second marriage, got a divorced, then got married again,
Yeah.
divorced, married again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mother's a whole new story. That is a whole new couch sitting with a therapist talking conversation. But so my first raising was in the Mormon church where my mother and father would go to church every day. And I was
Hmm.
blessed by my father in church and all this stuff. So
Right.
my mother and my father divorced when I was really early. So my mother then married her second husband, short-lived. Jason was born. Then third husband was the impactful one. He was the abuser. He was that guy, right? So my
Yes.
my mother stayed with him the most. But my mother and my
Interesting.
stepfather, while my mother was taking me to church, she tried to get him to go to church, but all of that in amongst itself was just chaotic. But here's what I remember being in Germany because my stepfather was military police, and he was in the military, and we were in Germany. We were in Hanau, and we were in
Okay.
military base housing, and the missionaries were over. Anybody that doesn't know what missionaries are in the military or in the Mormon church, they are two. Now women are doing it, but back then it was all just the young boys who went on a missionary to somewhere far, far away from home. And for 2 years, they preached just the gospel of the Mormon church.
Okay.
So my mother host, and then families in the Mormon church would host dinners and stuff like that because these were little poor little boys that didn't have any food. They were away from their mamas. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the families would host them at their houses for dinner or whatever. Okay. So I remember this whole scene. They were over, they had dinner, and they had this conversation. They were talking about celebrating the fact that the black men that were in the church can now hold the priesthood. They can hold the priesthood. So I remember going, and I was like 7 years old just before they baptized me. That's a whole nother therapy session too. But
Yeah.
but and I was sitting there, and in my little itty bitty mind, I kept on thinking, you have been teaching me that we love everybody and everybody's important, everybody's the same, this, that, and the other, and the Bible's this, and the Bible's, and all of a sudden you're telling me that you excluded a person because of the skin of their color. And
And
I'm
now
like
that, yeah,
7 year old going, wait, that does not compute with me. That did not,
doesn't make
I'm not going to
sense.
say nothing because, a
Right.
child does not want to be not loved by their parents. But I remember going, that's not right. And at that very moment, I'm internally going, started to reject these little teachings that I was taught only white girls marry white boys. I was taught that you do not play with the black children. You do not, I'm not kidding you. This is from the church. This is from the thing. This is what we do. This is how they literally, and they base it is in love, right? They come across as in, this is good teaching. This is the way we love our children. This is the way we're supposed to be. And these little itty bitty children, talk about indoctrination, is unbelievable what they do.
Yeah.
So we're taught this at this young little tiny age, how we're being pulled into, you stay with us, you stay with us, you stay with us, you stay with us, right? So these are the things that are being taught quietly in our homes. And so I remember being a teenager, and I was very attracted, and I called them caramel. So I like the caramel ones. And I was very attracted to them. But what I could not tell that to my family. I could not say that to my parents, right? In fact, I remember one time, this is on a military base on Fort Riley, teenager, and I'm hanging around. His name was Victor, and I
Hmm.
sneak off. I'm a sneaker. I was not a perfect child, but I was a sneaker.
I
And
don't know any teenagers that aren't sneakers, so.
I was the Mormon nightmare teenager. So I'd sneak off, right? And I mean, I really liked him and all of that.
Yeah.
And I remember going home and getting caught. I got caught just hanging around with him. We weren't kissing, hugging, nothing. I just got caught hanging around with him. He's a teenage boy, I'm a teenage girl. And I'm telling you, I was incredibly, I mean, it was almost like I was going to be restricted. This was like punishment, action, and behavior, that I couldn't do that. My mother would pull me to the side because my stepfather, was incredibly prejudiced. He was a military police, and him and his white buddies would come home to the house, and they'd sit around, and there was no alcohol involved at my house, but because of Mormonism, but
Right.
they would sit around, and they would have these stories that they would tell about the people that they were going into the houses, but they were using derogatory conversations. They were not
Right.
calling them with the utmost respectable names. They were not. So
Yeah.
a girl listening to all of these little stories that they had. And so I remember that. And I remember my mom pulling me to the side and said, that will be the last black boy that you talk to. And she had to make me promise. She begged. She just, I mean, everything she could just to keep me from not crossing that line. Don't cross that line.
It's just a person. Good
Oh, I
God.
I agree. I agree, honey. I'm completely on that other side. Remember, I'm that 7 year old little girl that started
Yeah.
rejecting all of this teaching. I just didn't have any power to get away from it because I was a little child, right? But I remember going, no. And I remember going, no, that's not right. That can't be right. That this is not right.
Yeah.
So these are the things that I'm being silently, quietly, through God teachings. And this is one of the worst things that I think my family and we would sit around as Mormons. We would sit around on the couch at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would read the Bible. or the Book of Mormon. This is what we did. I didn't have any other options at 5 o'clock in the morning other than to learn that. And so I remember my mother coming across, we would start the Bible all over again, talk about Cain and Abel. And my mother told me the reason why the Cain and Abel, they separated, and God made Cain or Abel, I don't remember which one anymore, white,
Hmm.
the one black. And that was always what his punishment was, is because they made it. I'm not kidding you. This is what they teach these kids. And I remember her saying the reason why that was their curse. That was their punishment for going against God. So I am this young child thinking that every person of color is now punished by God because they did not. I know, don't cry. I know, don't. It's awful. But every black person that's here and that is punished by God because they did not obey God because of the story of Cain and Abel. I know I'm not speaking to, I know that there's a lot of little white children out there, women right now going, yeah, that's what I was taught. So this is what they're doing to them. So when you come across a person who is, going to church and this, that, and the other, just remember their white children are not learning what you think they're learning. Right?
Wow.
Yep. Here's a caveat of that. I know that some people go to church and it helps them and it works for them. I'm not, that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
But let's get down to the conversation of how I was taught how to be racist from a little child. The indoctrination, how you do it, how you separate it, what they do, how they come across in loving ways, right? We love you, you guys, all of that stuff, and how it's done. So I then become a teenager. Like I said, I was the awful teenager, and I separate from my family. And I swore to myself, there was three or four things I said. Number one, I will never raise my children in a religious body, and that I will never, ever, ever, ever do that.
Yeah.
Two, that N word will never be said in my home. And that was one thing that I promised. I didn't know how to separate myself from the thinking and the indoctrination and all of that. I worked on it, but
Yeah.
sometimes I failed. I'll have to admit, I'm like, God, that was a little racist. How do I stop that? I don't know. Right? And I'm not getting counteractive information. I am just learning this as I go, mistakes. And
Yeah.
so as I'm doing that, and so I'm going through, so there was a few things that I knew I was not going to do to my children, and I didn't, and I don't do it to any of them. None of those type of things are not allowed in my home, includes, all of that stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know if I have done enough, but I do know that that chain right then and there was broken because I refused to teach another child how to be racist. And so with all
Yeah.
of that, knowing the things that when you did, you or did you not know this was going on?
That specifically? No. No. It's
Mind-boggling, isn't it? Shocking.
yeah.
So here's another thing too, and I'll let you definitely talk with your story, because this is really, really important. So as I
Yeah.
am becoming a white woman in a white society, and things like that, there will always be some white people, because I'm white, think that they can say a racist joke,
Anything.
right?
Yeah.
They always,
Yeah.
and before in my 20s, I would shy away from it. I didn't want any conflict. They were scary to me. I don't like how they think, and I never stopped it. And I would not join, promise you that. I did not join.
Yeah.
But I would kind of like, oh, and move myself out of the situation. And I
Right.
remember to myself, I felt bad about it. Like, I'm doing the right thing, but why do I still feel so incredibly bad about it? And it dawned on me, it's because I'm not confronting it. I'm not addressing it. They think it's okay to do this in front of me, and I'm not laying down my boundaries. And
They
that
think it's okay because they think you think that too.
correct. Just because I'm white, I'm a white
Yeah.
woman. And I was raised in a Mormon church. She apparently is, of
Right.
course. So
Wow.
yeah, exactly. And so once I stopped, okay, so I go, okay, that doesn't feel good. I need to be brave and start hammering down some boundaries. I
Yes.
remember one time it was incredibly scary. I said, "You're not allowed to talk." I was like at work. I'm like, That's not appropriate. Don't talk like that around me. And I got called a in lover. You know how they do it. I can't. I hate that word so much. But sorry. The uncomfortableness and the disdain that I recognized how sick this whole race thing is, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't hurting because they hurt my feelings. I was hurt because that was their appropriate response to me laying down boundaries and not being a douchebag in society, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm telling you that's not okay because it's cruel, and that's your reaction towards me, right? So
Hmm.
anyways, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Enough about that, because that gives you a baseline of what conversation. I want this to be so open. I want this conversation to be so open that we start addressing these things that we're doing to children. If anybody sees it, stop it, right? But
Yeah.
on your side, when you're child, when you're tiny, what was the conversations in your home, good, bad, or indifferent, about race?
Uh, my goodness. So my story is that I was born overseas. I was born in England, and my grandmother was white. My grandfather, who had passed before I was born, was from Ghana, Africa. And um, we have so many different races within my family that if you saw my family in England, you would see, I would say that's my cousin. And you'd be like, but she has blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, we're all so very different, but we're related because it's just never been a thing in my world. Now, I, my father was in the military. He grew up in Memphis, Tennessee in the 50s and 60s. Um, very poor. And when I say poor, our idea of poor today is not how it was then. And he came from nothing and he got in the military and he traveled the world and he became a cop in the military. So we have that in common. I lived in West Berlin when the wall fell. Um, when I came to America, I was a very different kid than normal, I guess, American kids. I didn't speak the way they spoke, of course, right? I'm coming from a whole other place, so I'm gonna talk with an accent or I'm gonna sound different. I was brutally teased for that. The way that I held myself, the way that I acted, um, I was teased for that because in America, we all have an idea of how you're supposed to act according to your skin color. And gosh darn it, they're going to hold me to it. And though I never, it never worked, I was always myself because who else am I going to be, you know? But it came with isolation and teasing and hurtful comments, and people just don't understand me. Why can't you just be like other Black people? Or a white person will say, well, you talk like you're white. And um, so that was my experience. So growing up with in an interracial setting, it was always explained to me that, Lacey, you got to understand that people are going to feel a certain way towards you because of your skin. But you have our family, my mother's family came from Spain and then they moved to Ireland and they were Romani gypsies and then they moved to England. And then my dad's side, I'm not too sure, but we have all of these things that are within our bloodline. And it's just my pigmentation that makes my skin this way. Um, but people don't assume that because I guess I don't, I always imagine it where it's like a person has like a swatch and it's like, okay, well, you don't fit this color and you fit this color. So you should, this is your background and this is what it is. Um, so it wasn't necessarily my family, but especially when I came to America, I was made aware of the differences and I was held in this box, and I was not allowed to be anything else. Um, and people are surprised at the way that I talk or my articulation or um, my choice in music. You're, you're Black, so you shouldn't be talking that way. Um, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and you don't do that. So, what's wrong with you? And that's been my experience. I'm very grateful for such an eclectic family. I'm very grateful to come from that dynamic. I wouldn't change it for the world just because I feel like that's how it should be. Um, your story, that's heartbreaking. Uh, that people are saying these things to their children. That's abuse.
Mhm.
Um, people are punished, and that's their punishment. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, it's taken me back because it's just, I had no idea that that was going on. And, you learn about all of the different ways a person can be racist, but that is amazing. I'm sad and I'm sorry that that's the experience that you've had, and this is what's happening. To be taught to hate, to be taught to hold yourself away from another human being simply because it's the color of their skin is just, it's more than abuse. I'm trying to find the word for it. It's psychological warfare. I mean, this is
Indoctrination.
brain brainwashing. This
Yeah.
is insane. If someone was injured and they held these views about me, I walk past them, they don't like me automatically. They go and get in their car and they get in an accident and they need blood. It just so happens that you got the blood that I donated. What would you know the difference? You wouldn't know the difference, and I saved your life, right? But you still hate me. And it's, I'm, there's so many things to say, and there's so many ways to go with this. As a Black woman in America, even now, we've never been more forward than we are right now. But there are so many limitations. For example, I come to Colorado and a few years back, and I'm naturally ambitious. I naturally want to go after things. I naturally want to be successful. And it's unbelievable how many times when I've tried to do something, accomplish something, how many people have stood in my way. And every time I have tried, the person standing in my way is a white woman. It's very strange, especially here. And I really don't know why, because it's not as if I'm unreasonable or I'm hurtful. I want peace. I want love. I want to relate. I want all the things everybody else wants. But there's something within these people, these women especially, that they feel offended, and they have to stand in my way. I remember I was working in a place and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle got married. And oh my God, did I pay for that? And it had nothing to do with me, but geez, the amount of hate that was demonstrated towards me, especially by an older white woman that I worked with. And I remember she's talking to one of our customers that comes in, and they're talking about it and they're making sure to talk about it so that I can hear them. And he says to her, can't the queen do something about that? And she says, yeah, really. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
what? First of all, you're American. It has nothing to do with you. Second of all, what's the big deal? What is the big deal? It came to a point, Sheila, that I'm standing in work. There's only five of us there. I'm the only person of color. This woman literally threw a Nazi salute at me. Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Nobody
Um,
else, nobody held her accountable.
I
Not
and
you,
here's
but me, like that's what that's the thing is I 100% support, like, we need to hold our white people accountable for their actions when we come against that. It's not your responsibility to fix
yeah,
their mental problem. It is ours to
yeah.
to give them the boundaries, the education, the whatever, and to push that back.
I She did.
Woo.
And I couldn't take it anymore. And I was the only person of color there. I just gave in my resignation and I couldn't deal with it. Um, and then I went to the next thing and I was really good at the next thing that I did. And then there was just another woman just like her, but slightly younger, that wanted to destroy everything and ruin everything and for me. And it's just a repeating pattern. And it's not as if I can say, why are you doing this? They don't even know themselves well enough to understand. They're just automatically doing it. They don't have the courage to dig and they don't want to because they think they're right.
Well, here's something that white little girls, for one, the purity culture, the this, that, and the other, right? Okay, so you have to be a virgin in order to
Yeah.
get the highest quality man. You definitely cannot be with a black man, because you would be damaged for life in the white man's world, right? So here's it's shocking. So this is the reason that I think, and somebody else can speak to this, because I'm sure I don't have enough information about this situation. So if a white woman was threatened by you, the reason why is because of her white privilege, her position is in jeopardy if she becomes equal, if you become equal to her. And not that it's true, because it's not true. It's a lie. It's an absolute destructive lie that they tell us, that this is how you're supposed to be. But that was the reason why, as a Mormon little girl, I needed to be pure and I needed to not ever be with a black man, so that you can get the highest quality white man that you possibly can in society. I was in a I was a con like a product. I was a product
Right. You were raised
for
to be a wife.
right,
Yeah.
to yeah, a product. So therefore there's the threat in itself. That would have been what my world would have revolved around if I wasn't such a terrible teenager. Now I'm very happy that I was a very rebellious teenager, and then I got out of this indoctrination as quick and as fast as I possibly could. So I
Yeah.
mean, I halted this teaching because I was already um doing everything they told me I couldn't do. But anyways,
Yeah.
so that, and I that's the thing. That's the thing is if you watch the old period movies and stuff like that, when they talk about a woman who is damaged, or what is it called, impure or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, that's the culture. But that
Mm-hmm.
culture is tainted with racism.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
they don't want to talk about, is that the reason why those little white girls need to be pure is because of racism, literally.
And sexism and just
All of it, all of it.
pedophilia,
Yes, yes, I was
that's
a
very strange.
very, very strange to be
You know,
indoctrinated.
the difference, I think, I wasn't, I'm not going to say my mom didn't raise me to be a wife, but my mom made sure that I understood that, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog.
I can't.
She has to be in the show. She's
Hey,
around.
So I know that we've been talking a lot about how it happens and what had happened to, the children and the indoctrination, and to start recognizing what's going on and where it's based. And we all know that racism is really based in money, power, and prestige, right? It really, really has nothing to do with the people themselves. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with my color of my skin, to be honest with you. It's just what they found in order to gain money, property, and prestige.
Yes.
So we all know that. So
Yes.
it has caused the worst part of us in this culture.
A plague.
A plague, a mental illness, a plague. I will call
Yes.
it a mental illness until the day I
It
die.
is a mental illness.
It is
Yes.
incredible mental, and it's not a mental illness that can't be cured because you can cure it. You know,
Yeah, you
it's
can.
situational mental illness. Situation
Yeah.
means that you were brought about. So
Yeah.
you were talking about, we were thinking about going into maybe counteractions. So in your life, what are the tools? What have you used? Where do you find your strength to walk through all of this?
Oh man. I think it's just me in general. I was taught to understand these things are going to happen. I was taught to know that this existed. The way that I've approached it, well, here's an example. We finally settled in the South, and I remember my parents, I went to a movie and I had to be 6, 7, or 8, and I saw this couple. It was a black young girl with a white young man. And we were at the movies. They come in. I believe that they had to leave because so many people had an issue with them. And this is in the 90s, people. Come on. And I remember talking to my dad about it later, and him and my sister told me that I should just stay in my own race because too many people are going to have an issue with it. And it really confused me because you're talking about my mother here who is mixed, right? And how could you say that? Um, and so for safety reasons, they said that to not have to be up against dumb opinions or
Right.
whatever, they said that. And then something in me is like, oh, well, screw that. I'm going to do what I want to do. And now I'm especially going to do this. And that's just been my spirit, you
Right.
know,
Mine too. Tell me what and something I can't do.
and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's the first thing on my list.
Yes. So it's just like, you're not going to tell me who I can love. You're not going to tell me who I can be. And of course, I understand and I know of these limitations because it's drilled into me all the time. I just absolutely refuse. I absolutely refuse to accept it. And that's how I move in it. And I move and I make my choices. And I teach my daughter and my son, you be who you feel guided to be. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. People can only meet you as far as where they are. And you can't let a person who's undiscovered to themselves, who acts out of hate, who acts out of um, ignorance, to dictate or guide who you can be or who you want to be. Um, so it's just been a more of a self-guidance and more of a knowing. Um, Looking back on it now, I think that it's been guided. Um, you don't really understand when your little messages or downloads that come to you or the guidance that's being given to you, just follow your heart and the ideas that are in your head. And that's been it for me. It's just basically a screw it, I'm doing it anyway. And these people that have come against me, I've still accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I still did it. I'm still gonna do it. And uh,
You said you were mentioning Martin Luther King. You said that you
mhm,
were listening to a little bit of Martin Luther King.
yeah, I was listening to his speeches, and it's strange. because I grew up in Georgia for the most part when I came to America. And my father was in Memphis when Dr. King passed away. And he grew up in Georgia as well. Um, there are other similarities that I have to him. I've always felt very connected to him in a very weird way. Down to shared names, shared initials, these things that connect us, though I of course didn't know him. And I was listening to his I Have a Dream speech, and I was listening to the last speech that he did before he died. And first of all, let's just be honest, Dr. King was a soothsayer. And I wish that we could talk about that more. And I wish that people would call that what it is. He was a soothsayer, and he had this speech April the
Wait,
3rd.
wait, you're saying soothe?
Soothsayer, yeah.
I don't know
So
what is that?
a psychic, um,
Okay, okay.
yeah, a
I've never heard
person.
this. I've never heard this before. So
I believe that's a term in the Bible. That's how they that's what they called prophets, soothsayers.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, he was. He knew he was gonna die.
Right.
And I'm listening to this man who I can't even imagine the fear. Um,
Speaking out. Yeah.
you
I,
know,
I can't
and
even.
I know I'm gonna die tomorrow. I know it's coming. I've seen it. It's been shown to me. And there's something at the end of his speech, of his last speech, where he says, it doesn't matter now. I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. Um, but basically, what he's saying is it doesn't matter anymore. He was put here to do God's will. He's done what he's supposed to do. There are times where it's going to get really hard now because I'm about to leave you. But I promise you that we're going to make it as a people. And I think it can be interpreted as the African American community he's speaking to, but us as a people, as humans, without our religion, without our gender, without our race, without all these constructs that have been placed upon us to separate us from one another. And he's saying that he's seen, he's gone to the mountaintop and he's seen the promised land. Um, he's seen the coming of the Lord, and whoever relates to that in whatever religious way, whatever that means. But I believe what he was saying is that we as a people, as a whole people, we're going to get there. This is going to stop. I don't know how long. I don't know all the things that it's going to take, but it's not up to one person. It's up to all of us. We can't just rely on one person. We have to continue to do the work. We have to move out of love. Um, we have to have these conversations. It's
Move it.
okay to,
I think you meant move into love.
sorry, yes, or move with love, or
With
move in
love.
our
Yeah, yeah,
actions with
yeah,
love.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, if you understand that the way you've been raised, or the ideas that have been put in your head, are in fact racism, prejudice, discrimination, you don't like
Investigate
it,
your beliefs.
yes, question it, talk to
Question.
people. It's okay to understand that this is not right.
Yeah.
You can change it. You don't have to hide in it. You don't have to keep it a secret. It's Secrets are nasty, secrets are dirty. They keep
Correct.
us locked in these cages away from each other.
Yes.
So yeah,
Challenge them. Challenge your beliefs. Challenge the thoughts that you have.
yes,
Investigate the reason that, like, where they have come from. Don't just go with it. The one thing, and this is probably going to upset a little people, but the one thing I cannot stand in having a conversation with somebody is that's the way I was raised. That burns my chap more than anything when I talk to somebody who needs and who is trying to investigate how to have change behavior. That's
Yeah.
how I know that they have jumped off the cliff and they are not going to change when they have already put their foot down. That's how I was raised. And I think to
Yeah.
myself, I agree with you. That's how I was raised, is enjoyable, great, and wonderful stuff. But to not examine everything that you were raised with and make sure that you're not pulling forward this racism idea and placing it in your future, or anything
Mhm.
that does not serve humanity, you, your life, another human being very well. Leave it there. You do
Yeah.
not have to pull it forward into your future
No, of course not. And you're not dishonoring anybody, and you're not
at
being
all.
rebellious, and you're not going against your parents. And I mean, if it means to go against your parents to question hate, or want to
Yeah.
understand why should I have to hate this perfectly good person, why would you want to be in that in the first place? You know, that's their idea. If you feel as if you're going against your family or your friends or your community because you're questioning such a terrible thing, you don't have any business being in that community.
And
There's
also just recognize that's called indoctrination.
Yes, it's not right.
It's
Just
not
because
right.
everybody else thinks that way, that does not mean that it's right.
Correct.
I remember having this conversation with a woman, and we're talking about Dr. King and the way of the world, and she's very weary. And she said, nobody's going to save us. And I was like, she was like, no one's coming. And I was like, who's supposed to come? I was like, what do you mean? Like,
Right.
Superman?
I
You're
agree.
supposed to save
It's
yourself.
right. It's like nobody's changing your mind but you. That'd be
Nobody.
your job.
Have you seen what happens to people who try to save us? They lose their lives. It's up to all of us. We can do this. We can make our lives, our world, any way that we want. Obviously, we're going against our grain. Obviously, this is not how we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
Up until a certain point, racism didn't even exist. And then it was created for financial gain, for power, in the name of religion, in the name of God. And that has nothing to do with God. We can
Nothing.
change this. It's not real, it's an illusion.
I agree. And if you're confused, like I was incredibly confused sometimes of my thoughts and my actions. I would just literally sit down and what they would consider praying or asking spirit to readjust my thinking. Give me what I'm supposed to have,
Yeah.
right? And the conversation and the words that and the actions that I'm supposed to have. And it
Right.
wasn't like I was directing it towards a organized religion, God. It was my own personal relationship with a spirit of my own understanding, right?
Yes.
That was the understanding. So that's definitely a tool that we can work with and get through. But I want to kind of go and we're going to wrap this up with this. I need to know from you the conversation, where are my boundaries in this allied relationship I have with you?
Oh.
Yeah,
There's
because
a lot.
we're taught to speak for you.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah,
That's one.
we're taught
Yeah.
to be the protector, that we're taught to, you're so we're taught that you're the less than, and we're the ones that's supposed to have the voice for you, right? So
Right.
just in that little small correction, I've learned wrong. But I need to know in my allied relationship with you, where do I need to be out of
I think
respect?
it's the same way that you would regard any other person, that you don't have this angst with, or a history with, or you don't have this, say, tension with, the way that you would respect a stranger in a conversation. You wouldn't want to hurt their feelings. Etiquette. Um, this is a person of their own ideas, of their own body. Being Black is not a monolithic experience. We come in so many shapes and sizes, and we like Star Wars too. I love Lord of the Rings. I like country music. I like pop. I love music. There is no difference between us.
Yeah.
Um, the same way that you would talk to anyone. Um, and the knowledge that this is a functioning human being who has a heart and a mind and experiences and pain and hurt just like me. Um,
When we go to battle for you or with us, or when we come across this, we're on the same side.
yes, we're on the
Where,
same side.
yeah. So where do you see? I'm trying to come up with the perfect question, but I'm struggling. Um,
I think what you said before, where you battle other white people who are making jokes or they're being inappropriate or they're saying hurtful
yeah,
things, please say that's not right. Please stand up against that. I can't, like you said before, I can't teach you. I can't be the person that learns this for you. It's not up to me for you to understand it. You have to do that on your own. When if you're in a situation or if you're in a circle in a social setting where a black woman, black man is talking of their experience, um, fight the urge to interrupt, fight the urge to tell this person what it is and what it ain't. If you hear your family members saying things that are wrong, question them as to why something like that is funny. Why would you say that? Explain it to me like I'm stupid. Like, stand up um, and do this with me. Because I can only handle my end, which is bearing this skin tone. And
oh gosh,
that comes with a lot. It's heavy. I carry it like somebody has put 100-pound weight on my back, and I have to put it on my back the moment that I wake up until I go to sleep. And even then, it's still there. I'm not released from this. And I can't be until we all decide that this isn't real and this is not true.
correct, correct.
Um,
Confront the lie.
Confront the lie, question
Confront
people.
the lie. And here,
Yes.
I'll leave it with this too. I completely believe in the Lila metric system, which
Mhm.
we call critical mass.
Yes.
If we can get this conversation and switch and change and start penetrating those racist beliefs and start addressing them the correct way, the critical mass theory is if we have enough people being against racism, we will start really fighting that battle.
Yeah. And then that goes into um, misogyny, and that goes into classism and
All of it.
status and being taught who's the enemy because they don't want you to understand that while they got you focused on me, who I'm supposedly wrong and I'm all these things, they're the ones taking out of your pocket. It ain't me. This
Yes,
is all a distraction. This is distraction. Look at this hand so you don't know what this hand is doing. Um, it's so much deeper. Um, but there we got to start somewhere.
yeah,
And once that begins, it goes into other things. And oh boy, are you ready? Because
right.
it's going to be a fight. But we
Yeah,
owe this to our children. We owe it to ourselves because we have been separated from one another. And imagine all the love that could have been in your life had you not been taught that there are barriers, as
correct.
if there's a difference between us. There is none. There is
None.
none.
Yeah, let's start confronting that lie. Be the person in your family to not allow that conversation around you. An example isn't a powerful, powerful thing, but you also have to use your words and actions
Yes.
along with it.
Yes, I remember seeing a video not long ago of a young black man that was stopped by the police in Washington for some reason. I don't even think he did anything. They just jumped on him. And his neighbors came out. He was at his in his neighborhood. I can't remember what the issue was. They were saying he had a gun on him. He did not. It's a cell phone. It's a cell phone. No, put your weapon down. Put your weapon down. I don't have a weapon. He's on the phone with his mom and he's bawling his eyes out. He's like, Mom, I'm terrified. They keep saying I have a weapon. I don't. His neighbors come out and a young white man comes out and he stands, literally in the line of fire.
Good. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And he was like, I'm gonna be right here with you. If this happens, I'm going down with you. And it's the same way if you and I if we were soldiers in a war and you're my friend, you're my companion, we've been through this together. If you're going down, Sheila, I'm going down too.
Correct.
We
Correct.
have to, the one thing that's going to resolve this is the one thing that has been kept from us is each other.
Oh gosh. What a beautiful final statement. Absolutely love that.
And remember, Dr. King said it, we as a people will get to that promised land. I know it. I feel it.
Oh, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you, everyone. I hope you've made it this far.
Thank you.